How exactly did Tottenham's system stifle Manchester City's attack? How did Conte deploy such an efficient offensive game plan? What are the two types of players that Manchester City are potentially missing? And what do the XG stats show about this game? So going into the game, Pep set up Manchester City in a 4-3-3 system and Conte was using a 5-4-1. The pattern of the game was obvious before it even started, with City dominating possession throughout the game, having over 70% of the ball. City's 4-3-3 would become a 2-3-5 in possession, with initially both fullbacks inverting, with Bernardo Silva dropping off from the forward line, with Gundogan and De Bruyne pushing up between the lines, which meant that Sterling and Foden were holding the advanced width on either flank. City were essentially matching Tottenham's back five by playing a front five. This was City's default possession shape, though we did see Foden drift in field as well, with Cancelo then overlapping into that space down the left side. Conte's side were content to defend passively in a deep 5-4-1 shape, allowing City's deeper line players to have the ball until they reached their defensive third, when the ball would get shifted wide of Harry Kane, whose task it was to cut off the passes into Rodri. We would see the central midfielder on that side, Bentancur on the left and Højbjerg on the right, push out the midfield line to close down the space. And this was very coordinated, as when this would happen, Bentancur and Højbjerg would make sure that they positioned themselves in order to cut off the passing lanes into the players behind them, which was Foden, Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne, sitting between the lines, and the wide midfielder on that side, Kulusevski on the right side and Son on the left, would sit very narrow, cutting off the passing lane to the player in the half space, and therefore forcing City wide. It was this narrow midfield four that stopped City being able to work the ball in between the lines throughout the whole game, and Tottenham were excellent positionally in midfield. Tottenham started the game absolutely perfectly, scoring within 5 minutes, enabling them to sit deep and compact and play on the counter. See, Conte's plan in possession was to play on the counter by transitioning the attack quickly, using Harry Kane as a focal point. We see here for the opening goal that City are pressing Tottenham high up the pitch in their 4-2-3-1 shape. When the ball was in the centre during Tottenham's build-up phase, the two wide attackers Foden and Sterling would sit narrow alongside De Bruyne, cutting off the passing lanes into Tottenham's central midfielders, and thereby forcing Tottenham wide, from where they would then look to squeeze over to that side, with Walker pushing up onto Sessegnon on the right, trying to compress the play. But Conte would have been aware of this and must have instructed Tottenham's backline to look for those vertical passes into Harry Kane's feet, who was dropping off from the forward line. The idea was then to have Son and Kulusevski making runs from out to in behind City's extremely high defensive line. The pass from Ben Davies is excellent, and Kane's first time left-footed pass on the swivel is world class. And Son reads the move telepathically, timing his run to perfection, and once he's released into a one-on-one by Kane, he has the composure to pick the right pass to Kulusevski, giving him an open goal to give Tottenham the lead. And from this position, Tottenham were perfectly set up to defend as they had started. See, the 5 at the back system is ideal for defending against City. This is because in possession, Pep's side essentially play with a front 5, with 3 central players between the lines. When the ball goes out wide, the players in the half space, usually Bernardo Silva, Foden or De Bruyne, will look to make an underlapping run into the space between the fullback and centre-back. Pep instructs the wide attackers, whether it's Foden, Sterling or Cancelo in this game in particular, to stretch the pitch by sitting high and wide. If you are playing a back 4 against them, when the fullback moves out to close down one of these wide players, a massive gap will be created between them and the centre-back on their inside. Sometimes teams will instruct one of the central midfielders to move across and fill in this gap. However, with the City players sitting behind them, they can be hard to track and may not be able to drop in time. However, with a back 5, you have an extra player in that back line, enabling the wide centre-backs Davies and Romero in this game to fill in this area where the underlap usually takes place. And because they are already positioned there, they don't have to move backwards and the space is automatically closed up, stopping City players even making this underlapping run in the first place. And this was the problem that City faced all game. Every time the ball was switched and shifted to the opposite flank, there wasn't that space for Bernardo Silva or De Bruyne to run into, and so City would then shift the ball backwards and continue to circulate the ball without actually progressing the ball into the box, and this was why City barely had any attempts on target within the first 30 minutes, recording an XG lower than Tottenham up until the 30th minute mark despite dominating possession. But City did get their equaliser, but it was an individual error from Tottenham rather than a systemic one, and this isn't a surprise as when you are defending in your half for the majority of the game against a side with the individual attacking talents of Manchester City, you are likely to concede either from a piece of individual brilliance from a City player, or in this case a mistake, which happened for City's first goal with Lloris spilling the ball right into the path of Gundogan, who made it 1-1. From this point it did look like an uphill battle, however Tottenham was still able to create chances. By the end of the game, despite City recording an XG of 2.32, Tottenham had recorded 2.00, pretty impressive against Manchester City. And a lot of this was down to Harry Kane, who was absolutely world class in this game. For the second goal he dropped off from the forward line and once again looked for that direct through ball in behind for Son. On this occasion it was intercepted by the head of Ruben Dias, but when the ball was moved out to Son on the left side, Kane showed his goal scoring ability by making a run into the perfect area from deep. Laporte completely goes to sleep. He should be aware that Kane is going to make that run in between him and Cancelo, and then call Rodri to drop back into the back line and then step back to follow Kane's run. He doesn't do this and Son's cross is perfectly weighted, and Kane's finish is absolutely superb to just glide the ball on the half volley into the top corner. And straight after, Kane had another chance. Here we see Tottenham breaking in numbers, which I feel is something that counter-attacking sides often forget. Here Bentancur is making a run ahead of Sessegnon. If Tottenham had been more conservative and instructed both Bentancur and Højbjerg to hold their position, then this pass for Sessegnon would not have been on and he would have had to beat Cancelo in a one-on-one down the line. Bentancur makes the underlapping run and Kane is making a run from deep. A similar type of run to one that we would have seen Frank Lampard make. As Son receives the ball here, I think Laporte has to recognise once again that the only danger is to his left side, with Kane's run in between him and Cancelo. As there is no one making a run down his right side, he can afford to shift over a bit and close off that passing lane. Either he doesn't realise this or he just can't adjust his position in time, and Cancelo on his outside, to be fair, has Kulusevski on his outside, so can't move too narrow. But maybe he can just take the risk, because if Kane does receive it, which he does, from Son's well-weighted pass again, then Kane has a one-on-one, which he only doesn't score because of Ederson's Schmeichel-esque save. Tottenham then also had a goal disallowed, which stemmed from a similar move. Here you see Kulusevski, rather than moving into a narrower position, this time decides to hold his position high and wide. Davies sees the opportunity and plays a wonderful ball to release Kulusevski in behind Cancelo. Cancelo should do better to stop Kulusevski coming inside on his left foot, as his block shot falls to the feet of Harry Kane, and I think Ruben Dias will feel that he could have moved towards Kane a bit quicker, as Kane takes a few touches to get the ball out of his feet, whilst Diaz's feet are planted on the floor and his shot squirms under Ederson, but the goal was eventually ruled out for an offside earlier in the move. Throughout this game I thought City lacked ideas and their play unusually was too predictable, with them constantly looking for the underlapping run down the flank, which Tottenham's wide centre-backs dealt with easily. I think in these situations City do need an alternative option, and I think they would have benefited from a winger who excels in dribbling past players in one-on-ones, like someone like Alan Saint-Maximin or Vinicius Jr. This is because if City had one of these in their team, they could have had them on the left or the right holding their width, and so when City shifted the ball from one side to the other, they could have created a 1v1 with the fullback, and rather than looking for an underlap or overlap from a teammate, they could have drove past the fullback into a crossing or shooting position. Ironically, I think a player that City let go, Leroy Sané, would have been perfect for this role. City could also use an out-and-out centre-forward who excels in the penalty box, and in particular from crossing situations. In this game when City had the ball in wide positions, it wasn't really a great option to swing in across, as Romero and Dyer would have dominated the aerial duels against Foden, Gundogan and Bernardo Silva. Someone like Haaland obviously would be ideal, as would have Dusan Vlahovic before his transfer to Juventus, but I even think that new signing Julian Alvarez would aid City in these positions. He isn't exactly a dominant aerial target, but his movement in the box and finishing from congested positions could be a massive benefit in these scenarios. However, as the game went on, City kept piling the pressure onto Tottenham and eventually got a stroke of luck when Bernardo Silva's ball across the box struck Romero's hand, giving Mahrez the opportunity from the spot to make it 2-2. And he smashes it into the top of the net, and from here it did look like City were the most likely winners. Before I analyse the final goal, if you do like the look of these phone cases and you do want to help support the channel, I'll leave them linked in the description below. They have a great variety of different designs, so definitely check them out. And I'll also leave some of my other videos, such as my video on Maradona and Ronaldo, as well as the Cantona Kung Fu kick, linked in the description below. But Tottenham, to their credit, didn't throw everyone behind the ball and settle for the draw, and looked to gain possession in City's half. Bentancur plays a very good lofted pass over the left side of City's back line, releasing Kulusevski down the right, and once again I think Cancelo could have done more to stop the Swede coming inside on his left foot and stopping the cross. He doesn't do this, the cross is fantastic, and Kane's leap above Walker is phenomenal, heading the ball into the ground and into the corner of the net, giving Tottenham a dramatic win at the end. So overall, I think Tottenham more than deserved the victory. They scored 3 excellently worked goals, with Kane at the centre of all of them, and they also created the one-on-one for Kane, as well as having a goal disallowed for offside, whilst also managing to restrict City for pretty much the whole game, and in the end it was an absolute defensive and offensive masterclass from Antonio Conte and Tottenham. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe and click the bell, and go to the description to check the phone cases and some of my other videos that I've left linked down there as well.